Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone.
Como ya me han presentado, me llamo
I've already
Néstor
been
Ganuza,
introduced.
soy
My name is
teniente
Néstor
coronel
Ganuza.
del
I'm
Ejército
a
de Tierra.
Lieutenant Colonel of the Army.
Mando una unidad dentro del Mando
I
Conjunto de
command a
Ciberdefensa que se
a
encarga de la
unit
simulación,
within
del
cyber defense. We
simulación
simulate
del desarrollo y de las
the
auditorías.
development and
Y a mí
auditing.
me gustaría hablar hoy
And I would like
aquí un
to
poco
talk to you about
de un aspecto
an
que a lo mejor
aspect that
no se suele
sometimes
hablar
is
en este tipo
not
de eventos.
discussed in this type
Nosotros
of
tenemos
events.
bastante en común
We
con
have
otros
lots in
CERTs,
common with other
pero
CERTs,
tenemos también
but
bastante
we
que nos
also
diferencian de otros
have
CERTs, y
many
eso es la parte
things
que a mí
that
me gustaría
differentiate
hacer un
us,
poco más de hincapié.
and I would like to talk about these.
Me gustaría empezar
Well, first
por
of all,
una referencia.
I'd like to begin by
Vamos a
making a
enmarcar
reference to something.
¿Dónde está la ciberdefensa
Let's
o qué es la
see
ciberdefensa?
the
¿no?
background,
Entonces,
context of cyber
la mejor
defense.
referencia que
The best
entiendo que en nuestro
reference, the
entorno podemos
background
tener es
that we
la
have
estrategia
is
de
the
ciberseguridad
EU
de la Unión
cybersecurity
Europea.
strategy.
La estrategia de la Unión
This strategy
Europea
from
de
the
ciberseguridad marca
European Union
en concreto 3 pilares.
sets out
Y por cada pilar
specifically
marca
3 pillars, 3
un
core
ámbito
areas.
dentro de la Unión
And
Europea
in
y un
each
ámbito
pillar
a
we
nivel
have
nacional.
the
De tal
scope
manera
of sector of the European Union and the national level.
De tal manera que podemos considerar
In a way that
tres
we
pilares,
could consider
tres
that there are
ámbitos
3
de la
pillars, 3
ciberseguridad,
core areas
y dentro de esos
in
tres ámbitos
cyber
también
defense,
encontramos
cybersecurity.
órganos
And in these pillars, in these areas, we see bodies that are responsible for these areas, at least at administration level. So let's begin with ICT security. Here we find how the European Union has many different bodies. We must not forget the private sector, the academia, and the industry. And within the public sector, the most relevant bodies in terms of cybersecurity are ENISE and CERT-EU. At national level, you've probably received information about the CERT, CCN CERT, INCIBE, with the CERT on industry, and also you've probably heard about the CNPIC. In terms of protection against cybercrime, which is the second pillar, anything that has to do with crime, wherever and however it takes place, we have the law enforcement agencies. At the European level, we have 2 bodies that are clearly relevant. We have the European Cybercrime Center, and we also have Eurojust, which harmonizes all the courts of different nations to have a faster solution to cybercrimes. And at the national level, we obviously have the law enforcement agencies. We have different groups, specific groups, and you probably know all of them. We have the pillar of defense. This is one of the most unknown areas. Sometimes it's not properly understood. In terms of cyber defense, in terms of the European Union, obviously the main bodies are the NATO and the European Defense Agency. We also have, as a specific body on cyber defense, the CCDCOE, the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence.
Y luego, a nivel nacional, está lo que es el Mando Conjunto de Ciberdefensa, que es lo que a mí me gustaría un poco remarcarles y que tengan ustedes una idea de qué es lo que es, ¿no?
A better idea on what this body is and does.
Es bastante importante en los temas de
In
ciberseguridad,
terms of cybersecurity,
la colaboración.
it's very
Y no la
important to
colaboración como
collaborate, not
palabras
just,
vacías, sino la
as an
colaboración
empty word.
real y práctica.
We have to
Es muy
have
importante a
practical,
nivel
real
internacional,
collaboration. It's very important
es muy importante a
that,
nivel
at
nacional
an
y
international
es muy
level,
importante
at
a nivel
a
dentro de tu
national
propio
level,
ministerio y
and
dentro de
at
tu
a
propia
ministry
vida.
level and at your
En el
life
marco
level,
de esta
there is
conferencia, a mí me
collaboration.
gustaría recalcar
Within,
la
this
colaboración
conference, I would
entre
like
los
to
organismos
highlight the collaboration
públicos
between the public
dentro
bodies
del ámbito de la seguridad nacional.
in the area
La
of
colaboración es estrecha,
cybersecurity. The
pero se puede
collaboration
mejorar.
is very close, but it could be improved.
¿Por qué es necesario la colaboración
Why
entre
do we
INCIBE,
need to
CENEPIC,
have a collaboration
FFNSER, el
between
mando de
INCIBE,
ciberdefensa, la
CNPIC,
industria, la
the
universidad, el
Joint
sector privado?
Command, the industry, the public sector, the
Pues a
private
mí
sector,
se me
and
ocurren
academia?
por lo menos
Well, I can think of
tres argumentos
three
para la colaboración.
main reasons for collaboration.
Primero es
First of all,
aunar esfuerzos
we
y
need to
recursos.
join efforts and resources.
Habrán
You've
escuchado
probably
aquí o por
heard,
televisión
here
o en cualquier
on
otra
TV
conferencia de cualquier
or
otra
on
entidad
media other
que los recursos que se están dotando a la ciberseguridad, en concreto en España en estos tiempos, es escaso. Bueno, pues lo mínimo que podemos hacer es coordinarnos entre nosotros para aprovechar todos esos recursos que tenemos y evitar la duplicación de esfuerzos y recursos. Duplicación o triplicación en ciertos casos. Hay otro argumento. Otro argumento es que si bien los ámbitos en teoría están bien diferenciados, el ámbito de las fuerzas y cuerpos de seguridad serían sus propias redes y el delito, el ámbito del CFNSER, el ámbito de sería sus redes, la administración, el ámbito del CNPIC, INCIBE, infraestructuras críticas y el ámbito del mando conjunto de ciberdefensa. La defensa, si bien los ámbitos en teoría están bien, luego en la práctica esos ámbitos no son tan fáciles de diferenciar. Les voy a poner un ejemplo. ¿Se acuerdan ustedes del ciberataque a través del software Black Energy que hubo en Ucrania allá por diciembre de 2015? Estuvo, bueno, pues una zona de la población en concreto, bastantes horas, bueno, dependiendo de la fuente, pues entre 6, 8 o más, y estuvo una zona de la población pues, sin energía eléctrica, ¿no? Si nos imaginamos ese caso en España, ¿cuál sería el ámbito? ¿Quién sería el responsable de dar respuesta y de prevenir? ¿Sería el propio operador? ¿Sería el INCIBE con su ser de seguridad e industria, porque es un ataque a una industria o a una infraestructura crítica? ¿O el CNPIC por ser una infraestructura crítica? ¿O la Fuerza y Cuerpo de Seguridad del Estado porque es un delito? ¿O es un ataque contra la seguridad nacional y la defensa nacional y tiene que entrar en juego el mando conjunto de ciberdefensa? Todas esas cosas, hay una zona gris en todos estos ámbitos y la va a seguir habiendo. Y la única manera de resolverlos es con una estrecha colaboración y una estrecha relación. Y de verdad que la vamos teniendo y yo creo que en el futuro la tendremos. Bueno, la ciberdefensa militar. Para algunos es una imagen de, bueno, es una persona vestida de uniforme, en la que defienden sus redes, tienen su CERT, dentro de su ministerio, dentro de sus Fuerzas Armadas, y se dedican a hacer lo mismo. Bueno, pues sí, nos dedicamos a hacer lo mismo que puede hacer el CFNSER, el FERSI y más. Y nos hacemos otras cosas que ellos no hacen. Pues me gustaría aclarar un poco el concepto. La ciberdefensa militar es, en concreto, el aprovechamiento del ciberespacio por las Fuerzas Armadas. De tal manera que en un conflicto es otra opción que le damos al comandante para decir, usted quiere conseguir estos efectos?
If you want to achieve
Bueno, pues
these
aparte del
consequences,
armamento
well,
del
you
ejército de
have,
tierra,
the
aparte de
weapons
las
of the
capacidades
army,
militares
you have
de la
the
Armada
military,
y aparte de las capacidades
of
del
the
ejército
Navy,
del aire,
and
tiene
you have
también
the
las
capacities
capacidades
of
del mando
the Air
conjunto de
Forces.
ciberdefensa
You also have
para
the
hacer
capacities of
unos
the
determinados
Cyber Defense
efectos.
Unity.
Y ahora
You
usted
need to
elige.
have, an
Elige en base a
impact.
qué,
And now
lo
you can
veremos.
choose. And choose based on what? Well, we will see this now.
Me estoy refiriendo a que el
I am
ciberespacio,
referring
y desde hace ya un
to the
tiempo
fact that
oficialmente en la
for a
OTAN,
while,
cuando decimos la OTAN es que ha sido ratificado por las naciones de la OTAN. Es decir, es oficial en España, se considera el ciberespacio como un dominio, perdón, como un ámbito militar de operaciones, exactamente igual que los otros ámbitos tradicionales, tierra, aire y mar. Me van ustedes a permitir que haga un pequeño... Siguiente, por favor.
Next slide, please.
Vale. Me van a permitir que brevemente haga una pequeña reseña histórica de lo que es el precursor del dominio de operaciones ciberespacio, que es el ámbito aire, es decir, la aviación militar como precursor en otro espacio de la ciberdefensa. El primer vuelo que se conoce de un avión que construyeron y su primer vuelo fue allá al inicio del siglo XX y no se tuvo un ejército completo del aire hasta nivel 20. Perdón, hasta el año 1939, es decir, después de 40 años. Es decir, la evolución de un ámbito de operaciones militares, la tecnología estaba, como ahora en ciberdefensa, la tecnología existe. Hubo reconocimientos aéreos. Hubo en 1911 el primer ataque aéreo, que fue el de un teniente, evidentemente de tierra, no existía el ejército de aire, teniente italiano, Giulio Gavotti,
an Italian lieutenant who was
el primer, que se considera el primer ataque aéreo.
First aerial attack, and it's what you see in the photograph. This is not the lieutenant. This is a photo that was taken later, but you can see that they take the bomb with the hand and they would just throw the bomb. So what level of maturity do we have in military defense? So we have the technology, the attacks exist, not only the manual attacks. So we are now well ahead of the phase of creating a service within an arm like the air forces. Well, in my opinion, the maturity level nowadays of cyber defense at an international level shows that Spain is doing quite well from an operational and military point of view. I think they are well positioned. We are even ahead of some NATO countries, but we are far from that air forces, that cyber forces. Because when we discuss the scope of military operations, we talk about what the NATO is saying. We consider cyberspace as a domain of operations in which NATO must defend itself as effectively as it does in the air, on land and at sea, the traditional spaces. So in the air, on land and on sea, the way of working, how the armed forces combat and use technology related to the land, air and sea is through the means of an army, and they have to have specific materials like the different armies have, whether it's ships, tanks, planes, or in this case software. They have to have material, they have to have a specific infrastructure, they have to have specific staff personnel, they have to have the individual and collective training that has to be specific as well. They have to have a specific organization and routine. We can't expect that a soldier goes tomorrow to cyber defense and is effective. They have to have training so that the joint command has been created as an embryo of the future army. The joint command of cyber defense is not just a headquarters. It's in general terms an army has to have command, headquarters, making plans for the operations, forces that execute these operations, and they need a force to support the command and the army to carry out the operations. I think I don't have much time, so I will just go right into the core of the issue. There are three specific capacities of the Joint Command of Cyber Defense that seed of what will be the future cyber forces. So it has the preventive defense. It has to be responsive, preventive, and reactive. I would like to highlight the part of collective training. We participate continuously in cyber exercises in the NATO, in the Cyber Coalition, in the CMX of the NATO, in the Cyber Europe from the European Union, and at this moment, this week, in the office of the Joint Command, we are carrying out a cyber exercise of the Ibero-American Defense Forum with the participation of countries of South America. This is organized by the Joint Command of Cyber Defense, collective training. This is what we do in the armed forces from when we get up until we go to bed, even though it looks strange and it sounds like a lie, but the true mission of the armed forces is to train, to try and never get into combat and have to use force. This is the mission of the armed forces. This is what we call determined. We have a team of inspections and auditing that works closely with the CCN CERT, and we also have a team of security operations deployable team, so that we have the military capacities of the command in a reduced format, and we can bring them to the operation areas and work in exercises in the operation zones and deploy our cyber defense in that case. We also have the exploitation. We work in intelligence of cyber threats, in early warning, and very important in the contextualization of the incidents. Why? Why do we do this? Because, as I mentioned, the fundamental mission, the raison d'être of the armed forces is not to use the force. It's determined. Is that the enemy knows that we have the force, we have the will to use it against them if there is harm inflicted, and we will inflict him more harm that he's doing. But to whom? Attribution in cyberspace. To have a specific determinant, you need to know who's the enemy. You have to work in the area of attribution. And I'm talking about technical attribution. A legal attribution for a court is something different. I'm talking about technical attribution in terms of support to deter, not to support legal measures in a court. This is a very complex issue. And then we have the scope of response, the response against an action, which will always be timely, legitimate, and proportionate. What does that mean? Let's see the characteristics. Timely, legitimate and proportionate means that first we will use the force as long as in a conflict under the mandate of an international organization such as the UN, NATO, EU, etc. Also, the use of force needs to be within the fighting rules, which is the legal agreement that says you will only use force in these particular cases. But that's not enough, because the use of force needs to be necessary to fulfill the mission, and it has to be the best option available. What is the best option? It means that the command has other options. They have land, sea and air to produce an impact. And if we talk about cyberspace, we have to see what's the effectivity, the efficiency, the collateral damage, and the risks on the actual forces. Sometimes the command will have on the table that in a conflict to produce a specific effect or impact, they have a cyber weapon as the cleanest action they can take. It could be the most precise, the most efficient, the less harmful, and with the least collateral damage. Let's imagine the example of the command wanted to have an effect to cancel an information system in a specific period of time. Imagine in the Georgia war in 2008, there were the Russian movements that were coordinated with an attack against the web pages of the Georgia government. Maybe the impact, the desired impact, is something similar. Together with land troops, we want to cancel for a very specific period of time a system of maritime control, air control, etc. There might be different options available to the command. Bombing, which could be not efficient at all, because we're not attacking the service, we're attacking the facilities where the service is supposed to be, if it's not duplicated or replicated in a different place. It could be very expensive, the collateral damage could be high. Maybe the risk to their forces is high. There could be special operations that are complex and dangerous. Maybe effectivity would be compromised. There could be an attack on a service that is targeted, a very targeted service. Then the collateral damage would be controlled, and there would be no risk on their own forces, and could be that this is the most efficient operation and most controlled. And I think I completely ran out of time, and I will not take your time for lunch. Please, I apologize, but thank you very much.